Welcome to This is Getting Old. I'm your host, Melissa Batchelor, and today I'm joined by Dr. Tracey Yap, and we're going to be talking about pressure injuries. And that's a term that has had a lot of different names in the past that we'll talk about. So welcome, Tracey. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm good. Thank you.
Good.
Thanks for the opportunity to actually talk about this.
Well, we've actually had lots of conversations about it, so I'm happy to be able to share these with other people. So maybe just tell us a little bit about your background, kind of how you got into nursing.
Sure. I'm actually a Canadian, so I started out as a bedside nurse. So in a diploma program, 3 years living in the hospital. When I came down to the US, I was taking some courses at a local college, and it's a liberal arts college. And my husband thought, well, you should really know what it is to be an American. So take some political science courses. Long story short, it ended up that I finished my bachelor's. And then I went to University of Cincinnati and did a bachelor's to PhD in 4 years. So I'm one of those.
Interesting to talk to so many different people, and everyone has little slightly different path of how they got into nursing, but it's always like a great basis that then your career can go in lots of different ways. So
yeah, that's the beauty of it. When I actually graduated high school, I thought about dental hygiene, and I was dating a pharmacist at the time, and he said, if you do nursing, he said, there's just so many ways to grow. And that was the best advice ever. And it actually has been a fabulous career.
Right. And I think I didn't even know all the things that nurses could do until I was actually in nursing school. So,
right.
So that's another, part of what we're trying to do here with 2020 being Year of the Nurse. So talk to me a little bit about how you got interested in pressure injuries and your program of research.
Sure. I actually started out with my PhD was in occupational health. And I was all about movement and getting people in the workplace to move, to be healthier and lose weight. And my husband, who's a family doc, and he was a medical director at the time of a nursing home, said to me, I've really got a big problem with pressure ulcers in this nursing home. And can we write a grant that would help us with this problem? And he had the idea of playing music. It actually started when he had this idea. He had the maintenance fellow use
Boombox.
Boombox, thank you. Boombox.
I was thinking, like, when did this happen? Do we have Apple little iPhones yet? I was like, it's got to be like boombox.
So he played the boombox over the intercom system every 2 hours during his shift to remind the nursing staff to move people. And so we wrote a grant and took that to a whole new level. We had an engineer. We got one of the inquiry grants from RWJ, actually. And so that was my first real clinical trial. And we actually had a 45% protective effect when we did that. So that sort of switched me from occupational health to geriatrics. And so I moved to Duke. I got recruited to Duke and really just focused then on geriatric nursing. And I got a Hartford a Claire and Fagan fellowship with you. That's how we met. And just to continue on and sort of evolve within geriatric nursing.
So let's talk about the study here that you're talking about right now. So that when the music played, like how often did it play, and then what did people do?
Yeah, it played every 2 hours. We got it. We got a system obviously going within the intercom, and it would remind not only nursing staff but the patients. And we built in everybody, which was unique. And our team has always said, we cannot just focus on those that are deemed at risk. We think everybody in long-term care is at risk. And so we had everybody involved. If you didn't have to have hands-on, like a 1 or 2 person lift, then housekeeping, maintenance, clergymen could remind people that were assigned to them to get up and move. And by the end of our year-long trial, it was phenomenal, like the culture change. It became apparent to us during this time that nursing culture in particular, they had their own culture, and their own culture changed within each unit and each setting. And we were very focused on that, because we would have nursing homes that would pick their music based on what the residents wanted, as opposed to nursing homes that picked what it was that was important to the staff. And like the ones that would theme it out, for example, each month, like whether it was going to be the ink spots month. I learned a ton about music at the time. So it was just really fascinating to watch that whole thing unfold. Residents sharing stories. Music really brought to life the fact that, these were memories for them, and they would share stories. Nursing staff took time to listen. They were dancing in the hallways. It was just a really amazing thing that we never even realized was going to happen. So of course we didn't ever measure half the stuff, but we did focus at that time on the nursing culture. We did develop out of that particular study the nursing culture assessment tool, and we've since validated it and across settings and standardized the scoring so anybody can use that.
Yeah, so I think the way that our work relates together with music is that part of your brain is actually retained even with very advanced Alzheimer's. So I'm sure that even for staff to, if they played a song the resident loved and the person can sing off the words, but they can't talk to you anymore. So it's a great way to build relationships, so I just love the idea of doing the music and the cueing. And so now let's fast forward to kind of what are some of the things that you're doing now?
Yeah, so we have a trial from NINR, funded by NINR, and that trial really is at this time focusing on repositioning and the amount of time you can stretch it out to safely prevent pressure ulcers. And so
let's just do a little bit of, I'm going to fill in a gap here.
Okay.
So right now in nursing homes, kind of the standard of care is that we're turning and repositioning residents deemed at risk every 2 hours. And, you told me one time that was based on one study that had been done in 1964, but yet that's still like what everyone believes we should be doing.
Yeah, that it actually did come from out of England, actually, Norton, and she was great. But it was just a chart review study of 74 people. It wasn't a great study, but it did demonstrate at that time that the least amount of pressure ulcers came from those that were moved every 2 hours. And then in 2005, Tom DeFleur had done a trial where he looked at people every 2, 3, 4, and 6 hours in terms of who got the most pressure ulcers, right? The problem with his study was he used a standard mattress in the 2 and the 3 hours, and then he used high density foam for 4 and 6. So, I mean, it wasn't, again, a great study, but Nancy Bergstrom, the Braden scale, Nancy and Barb's whole career is around the Braden scale. Nancy looked at Tom's work and said, look, we should mandate everybody has the high density foam mattress, and let's look at 2, 3, and 4 hours. In 2013, she published her trial in JAGS. And that was the same time we published our trial from the music. We published a month before her. At any rate, her trial demonstrated there was no difference between 2, 3, and 4 hours. It didn't seem, if you used high density foam, you didn't get any more pressure ulcers at every 4 hours. Long story short, the weakness, what is considered the weakness in her trial, was that it was nursing documentation that, they document whenever it's convenient for them, obviously. It's not the priority in what you do. And so people believe that, you could just check off, yeah, I turned them or what have you. So that was deemed a bit of a weakness in her trial. So I came along in her life and I said, look, there's this new company out there that is just getting FDA approval and this company, basically it would be the equivalent of a Fitbit on your chest, but it would track people. So then it's, the documentation is there. It's not a self-report. And so I said, let's use that and take a look again. And I also believed, because Nancy in her trial only used people considered moderate or high risk. And I said, I want to use everybody. And our teams went back and forth because we blended teams as to whether this was appropriate. In the end, Nancy will tell you now, it's appropriate, right? I mean, people in long-term care, they're all at risk. And everybody had high density foam mattresses. And you had, what we did was, if this became the standard of care in each of these nursing homes, whether they were going to be repositioned every 2 hours, every 3, or every 4 hours, and people had the right to refuse that care. I mean, everybody has the right. So, but we had, the majority of people were involved in the trial.
Right. So basically what has happened since 1964, even 2004, when those first 2 studies were done, is that we've improved the technology of our mattresses. And now you can actually have a very objective measure with the device that sits on their chest, so that you know whether or not the staff moved them, whether the resident moved themselves.
Correct.
So you can standardize.
Yeah, it's quite sophisticated. It'll actually tell you the degree of angle that they're at. Like, it's very sophisticated. So we're going to get a lot, every 10 seconds we get data. And so we have a ton of data to go through in relation to that. But the mattresses is an important thing, right? I mean, that technology helped to redistribute pressure from, and so we ensured that everybody had a viable mattress before we ever launched the trial.
And then you still pull the cueing part in with the music?
Yeah, so the technology actually had screens in the nursing stations and then down the hall that would display the resident and whether they were due for a repositioning or coming due or overdue. So that was nice. It gave the nursing staff a bit of a hand in terms of that. But I mean, imagine yourself as a resident, right? And you're trying to sleep at night. Everybody's door is cracked open, so you got that light coming in. There's noise going on in the hallways. Even your roommate could be making noise, right? So it's very difficult to sleep. And then to add insult to injury, the nursing staff is coming in every 2 hours to reposition you so that you don't get that pressure injury. So now what's complicated is you're now sleep deprived. And we know that sleep deprivation causes our brains to misfire, right? So it leads to issues in our memory and our visual perception and our balance. So, I mean, it's possible that that may be contributing to our falls, our increase in falls in nursing homes, right? So all of these things are sort of interrelated and equally important. So many areas for nursing scientists to study.
Yeah, that's true. So, so the cueing part, actually, because we've talked about things that help the resident with the different mattresses and the device, and then the nursing staff has the visual monitoring.
Right.
They can
It's a way to support nursing staff, right? In terms of helping them recall the task, because how we as nurses function on the floor is we address priorities. So if you're having a blood sugar low, obviously that's a priority above repositioning, right? And so it takes my focus. Or somebody falls, that I need to deal with that as a priority. And so by cueing, it gets people back on task. And it also, in this case, by having screens in the hallway, it enabled anybody else on the team to see, and they're aware, oh, you're taking care of the ambulance or what have you, and I see that your patient's overdue or due for a turn. I'm going to give you a hand. So it now improved teamwork and communication as well.
So that's great.
Yeah, and then because we have our tool, the nursing culture assessment tool, we can now take a look at that subculture and how that changed in relation to the care they delivered, right? How did it impact it?
Right. And which cultures work the best, so then that helps to inform kind of leadership and management decisions. Because just because you've been in one nursing home doesn't mean you've been in all nursing homes. So
That's right.
they are all, vastly different. with
And
everything.
pressure ulcers, for the most part, the majority are preventable, right? So this is a problem that we can actually solve. This is actually something that we can get right. We don't have to just guess at it. We're not just putting a Band-Aid on it, right?
Right, and we also don't need to blame the nursing staff, if these things, are happening, because that's usually where the brunt of the blame gets put.
Right. So we need to understand turning itself, right? We need to better understand what's happening. When we reposition somebody, do they stay in that position? And, this is the type of data we'll collect in our trial. What angle are they at? Do they stay there? Do they, what's going on in relation to that? So is the head of the bed raised slightly, blah, blah, blah. So we'll be able to piece maybe the story together a little bit better about how best to facilitate nursing care.
Okay. And so now I have to do a little bragging on you, and you can explain this a little bit more also. But your work has been, in 2019, you were awarded the Presidential Early Career Award for Scientists and Engineers, or the PECASE. And I had never heard of this award until you told me that you had been nominated. Now I know that it's the highest honor that the United States government gives to outstanding scientists and engineers who are beginning their independent careers. So maybe talk a little bit about PECASE and.
Yeah, that was just an honor. I think our team is, you're never individual, right? And I've been really blessed with actually a lot of senior scientists on my team. So it took a year and a half, and I think that's what I would want to put out there to people. You don't just write a grant overnight or in a couple weeks, right? It took us a year and a half to truly write this current clinical trial that we're doing. I think it was something like 65 versions of just the aims page. So I for young scientists, I want to stress that it's okay to take your time. It's really actually quite important, because the better your grant is and the clearer it is, once you launch, the easier it is for you. If you have weaknesses in a grant, it actually is a stumbling point. So when you submit to NIH for funding, for example, and you get that feedback, because I now sit on review committees too. At that time I didn't, but I understand now, sitting on the review committee, it's never about tearing your science apart. When you get those reviews back, these are people that have that experience to say, hey, this needs to be checked, right? Because this is a complication for you. So that in that sense, I wish I understood that better, because I was always terrified of those reviews. But after a year and a half, when we submitted, we did have a perfect score, and I think that probably contributed to the PECASE award. But it's lovely that nursing is included in those type of things, and nursing science is now at the level to be included. So yeah, it was a great honor.
All right. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to say or add?
I guess when I was starting out, I was always terrified to reach out to people to have them consult or collaborate with me. And I now realize that even though I was scared, and Ruth Anderson, I have to give her a nod for this, because she was the one that pushed me to reach out to Nancy Bergstrom, for example. But you can't just launch your career by yourself. So reach out to people that are working in that field, because they're always happy to tell you things, right? There's so many different ways to look at a problem. I can't obviously look at the, pressure ulcer prevention I can't do all that work. I'm happy to share ideas with you and help you launch your career. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just focused on pressure ulcers. Like, for example, we just got an administrative supplement to our clinical trial. And we're going to look at specifically people with dementia and people with obesity and how they move differently and what are their patterns of movement in relation to getting pressure ulcers. So, that's just one example of how you can take your subject area and branch out into other things, because like I said, they're all interrelated.
Right. And I think that, even just the story that you shared with us today, it shows how you took kind of your work around cueing reached out to Nancy and pulled in, her work and her study with the Braden scale and the mattresses and the turning,
Right.
every 2, 3, 4 hours, but then also partnered with industry, to get that tech piece there. And
Yes.
so, I think that's the other thing to get people to think about is there are lots of different players and there's ways to put technology together with nursing, and to basically, then take it to the next level.
Yep,
And
exactly. Just be curious and believe in yourself, because there are people that will, you know, naysayers as you're going. They have a specific path they think you need to be on. I would advocate that you run with what interests you.
right.
Have a passion.
And, I think that most people that work, you and I know this, but most people that work in nursing homes are there because they truly care and love those residents. And I think that, part of what your intervention does is bring that support to them. And so I think there are a lot of people that are going to be really happy when you finish your work and get it published, and looking forward to you helping develop the new standard of care.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate the ability to disseminate my work. So thanks for having us.
All right. Yeah.
All
All right. Thank you.
right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me today for This Is Getting Old. If you'd like to know more, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you have any questions or a related topic you'd like to hear from me about, just let me know. Thanks.